Bicara Supply Chain, highlighting and showcasing solutions for the most complex challenges facing the industry in 21st century by our team of subject matter experts and mentors. Broadcasting every week, all year round, we will present the most up-to-date series of podcasts and webinars.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bicara Supply Chain, the podcast. This is Nurhadi, your host. Today's topic is about inventory optimizations, and I'm glad to have Nicolas Vandeput. He is a supply chain data scientist specialist in inventory optimizations and also demand forecasting. Nicolas is founder and consultant at SupChains based in Belgium. So thank you for joining us and welcome to the show, Nicolas.
Thank you, Nurhadi. It's really a pleasure to discuss this topic with you today.
Okay, cool. So before we get in more details into this topic, which I believe this would be a very interesting topic for today, can you please brief a bit about yourself, your professional experience from practitioner to be a consultant and book writer specifically in supply chain?
Yeah, sure. So I started my career as a supply chain consultant, and step by step, I started to work more and more on demand planning and inventory question. And then I realized somewhere in 2015-16 that most of the practitioners or consultants were using mostly rule of thumbs. So basically, when facing a demand planning question or an inventory problem, they would just go on Wikipedia and use the formula that they could find on Wikipedia. As I realized that, I decided to spend more and more time studying this model and studying the, let's say, best practices from the academic and theoretical world and see how I could apply that to the real business world. And then in 2017, something changed. I started to use machine learning, especially for forecasting. So I call it machine learning. You can call it data science, artificial intelligence, whatever. But this really changed. It really changed the game, right? So that's why in 2018 I decided to write my first book, Data Science for Supply Chain Forecast, to share the new best practices.
Okay, awesome. So talking about the inventory, then I remember that you have published a book called Data Science for Supply Chain Forecast back in 2018, right? So can you please tell us what are key messages from this book?
So the initial idea from this book was really my personal journey as someone working on model for demand forecasting. I realized in 2017 that machine learning, data science is really a game changer and which really give anyone the ability to create really extremely powerful and accurate forecasting models. But I faced an issue is that online or in books, you had really no resources to explain you how to use that. So that's how I got the idea to write this book, Data Science for Supply Chain Forecast. And this book is really about how to use machine learning, how to use data science to create your own forecasting model. And what I mean by that, it's not a theoretical book for academics or for students, no. It's a really practical book that will explain to practitioners, professional consultants, how to create themselves on their own computer, and rather quickly, it can be done just in a few weeks, their own machine learning model to be used at work. And that was really my objective. The book is full of what I call do-it-yourself section to really show people, okay, you can do this yourself. You don't need to have a PhD in math. You can use machine learning. I knew that 2 years ago, and it's still the case today, data science, machine learning can sound like black magic to some people, or to others it would just sound like a buzzword. So some people are saying, okay, this will solve everything. That's not true. It will help you, but it will not solve everything. And some people are saying, okay, it's just a buzzword. In 5 years from now, no one will talk about this anymore. That's not the case neither. That's for sure that data science, machine learning will stay within supply chain and will help us to go, I would say, to the next step.
All right. So, Nicolas, we may need to understand a fundamental of inventory. So, in your opinion, what is the inventory optimization talking about, and why is this important for supply chain? Till to recent data, of course.
Yeah. So, inventory optimization it's a really complex subject.
Okay.
I'm writing now a second book about it that's going to be published really soon in March or April 2020. So it's really just a few months from now. The issue of inventory optimization is what I call in this book confusion curses, in the sense that the same concept, if for example, I talk about stock target and you talk about stock target as well, maybe by stock target I have something in mind, but you have something totally different, and then we get into some kind of a confusion. The word lead time as well can be confusing for you and me, even though we both talk about lead times. You might be thinking just about, for example, transportation time, and I might be thinking about something much broader than just that. And this creates a lot of confusion for inventory optimization. What I've seen also is that people that try to make a model to assess how much stock we need would mostly rely on formula that you can find everywhere on internet, but without the proper understanding on how this, I would say, formula fits the bigger picture. And then despite the fact that you use the right math, you don't put this formula in its right location, and you end up not following the right policies. As I am facing this, as I am facing more and more issues related to inventory optimization due to the fact that people get confused by terminology, the math and policy, I decided that it was time to write a book again for practitioners to show them, okay, this is how, again, yourself, you can optimize your own inventory policies.
Yeah.
Now, maybe to really go back to the question, okay, what is inventory optimization? I see most likely three main questions. I'm saying three main questions that you want to answer with this. If you have a good inventory policy, you need to first answer two questions. How much you should order and when you should make an order. And when you make an inventory policy, and that's what I'm saying to students, I've been teaching this at 2 universities since years now, you only need to answer two questions, and everyone can answer or understand the answers. How much do you need to order? Is it 100? Is it 1,000? And when do you need to make this order? Is it when you have less than 5 pieces, or is it every Monday? These are the two basic questions. You can add a third one if you have a complex supply chain, which is where should you locate inventory in your supply chain? This question is much more complex, but that would only be beneficial for, I would say, international or big supply chains, right?
Yeah. So in relation to the optimization itself, based on your experience, do you have any recommendations for the structured approach to set up an effective inventory planning to be more optimized? It's like what you mentioned before.
Yeah, sure. So my passion is the data science. So for any kind of inventory optimization project or a demand forecasting project, the first thing I would advise for anyone is to first work on the data and to get a clean, consistent data set, either both for master data, but also for historical sales or demand data. That's not the sexiest part of the project. It's a bit boring, but you really need that. You need to have a proper data set so that afterwards, everything you do, you know it's based on something that is correct. If you don't take the time with data, basically you're creating a house of cards, and it might just crash at any point in time. So first thing, take the time to gather data, clean it, and be sure that it's consistent and you understand everything. That's also the longest part in a project, and that's what I've seen from many clients. So once you get this good data set, you can start to work on a model. So basically saying, okay, I have this demand, I have this kind of project, this type of lead time, and so on. This is the inventory policy I'm going to create based on some mathematical equation. So again, the inventory policy in the end, even though you might use complex things, it just goes back to how much do you need to order and when do you need to make this order. So it's like simple questions. You can have a lot of math, but simple questions. So now you could think, okay, now that I have this model, I have the data, it's solved, the project's over. No, that's not true. You have a last step, which is change management. You then need to go to the demand planners, the inventory managers, and so on, to convince them to use this model and to start to discuss with them to see how you can refine your model further. And for me, as a consultant, this last step is extremely important, that you can go to business people, to local demand planners and so on, and really see how they use the model, because even though they don't get the full matter, they don't have the full data set, they still will see some flaws in your model, and you need to discuss with them to improve your own model. So this last step is really important. And on top of that, I guess it's really natural and obvious for many, if you cannot convince people to use your model, you can have a really good thing, but no one is going to use it, so it's still a failure.
Yeah. So then this would be our last questions from today's episode. Do you see any benefit for having these optimizations? If you have any case study that you may be able to share with us.
Yeah, sure. So inventory optimization, business case for inventory optimization have been widely debated, both among academics who came up with new models and each time try to apply these new models into industry, trying to prove their point that their model made sense. But it has been also documented by a lot of consultancy companies that want to prove that they do a proper project. I have a full section in my book covering all these kind of business cases. But basically, I could summarize it like that. If today you start with an inventory, I would say with a bad, let's say a bad inventory policy, so something really based on rule of thumbs where you just say, okay, I'm going to stick to 4 weeks of inventory or 5 weeks. And you go from this to, I am using a bit of math, not something really complex, but it's like consistent math with consistent data. You can expect to reduce inventory by 10 to 30%, while keeping service level constant. And going from this rule of thumbs to I'm keeping 4 or 5 weeks to I'm using a bit of math, it's already a lot of savings for most of us. So I would really advise any company to do that. Now you can go from this, I would say, second stage to a third stage, which is really I'm using, let's say, complex math, but also I'm optimizing inventory across my whole network. If I have multiple layers of warehouses, I'm gonna create an inventory policy that's consistent across the whole network. You can again win from 10 to 30% of inventory. I've seen extreme cases where you could go from this second to third stage even to an inventory reduction of 40%. So it really means that by spending time to refine model, to understand the data, to understand the business, lead time, and so on, you can drastically, and I really mean drastically, reduce inventory level while keeping the same or even a better service level. So to the question, can we reduce inventory and improve service level at the same time? I would definitely say yes, we can.
Yeah, very interesting. So thanks, Nicolas. Thanks for the day, and look forward to speaking with you at another time. See you and goodbye.
At Bicara Supply Chain, we are committed to driving global perspective to embrace technological adaptation in improving process efficiencies. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share Bicara Supply Chain. And stay tuned for the latest updates. To learn more, visit our website www.bicarasupplychain.com. Thank you for listening to us. We look forward to seeing you at our next episode.